The storm the night their son disappeared was the kind that makes the world feel like it's coming apart. The kind that steals sound, hope, and reason all at once. It was the kind of storm people talk about years later because everyone remembered exactly where they were when the sky roared like a wounded animal. Marcus and Elena Weber would never forget it. Their home sat on the edge of the thick Bavarian woods, usually peaceful, usually comforting. But that night, the trees seemed like dark walls swallowing anything that dared step close. Their 9-year-old son, Lucas, had vanished into that storm, and despite search parties, rescue dogs, drones, and desperate prayers shouted into the darkness, no trace of him was ever found. Only his footprints leading into the woods, and then nothing, as if the earth itself had taken him. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us bring you more stories that remind us of the beauty that can still exist in this world. In the weeks after Lucas disappeared, silence became the uninvited guest living inside the Weber household. It clung to the walls like thick dust, muffling everything. Even the ticking clock seemed ashamed to make noise. The only sounds were the occasional whimpers from Max, Lucas's German shepherd, who refused to sleep anywhere except by the back door. Max had been Lucas's shadow, guardian, and playmate since puppyhood. He had searched harder than anyone that night, howling relentlessly, trying to drag Marcus deeper into the woods, as if he sensed something no one else could. When rescuers had finally pulled the exhausted dog away, Max had collapsed. But his eyes never stopped searching. People say animals feel grief differently. But anyone who saw Max in those days would swear he carried heartbreak like a human. He hardly ate. He hardly moved. Sometimes he would walk to Lucas's empty room, sniff at the bed, then curl up in the doorway as if waiting for the boy to step over him like he used to. Every morning, as the sun painted the sky gold, Max stood by the back window, staring into the forest with ears raised and tail, still but not wagging. Never wagging. Then, on the 21st morning after the disappearance, something strange happened. Max began tapping firm, deliberate taps on the living room window. It startled Elena so much she dropped her cup of tea. Max's paw struck the glass again and again with a rhythm that wasn't frustrated or random. It was intentional, almost urgent. Then he looked back at the woods, sat down, and whined a deep, anxious sound that vibrated through the room. Marcus and Elena assumed it was nothing, just Max reacting to wildlife. But the next day he did it again, and the day after that. For an entire week, Max approached the window every morning at the same time, tapped insistently, then stared at the forest as if trying to guide them somewhere. It grew difficult to dismiss. The dog had never behaved like this before. It wasn't barking. It wasn't panicked. It was a signal, a plea. Marcus felt a strange shift inside him after so many days numbed by grief. This odd pattern began to carve its way into his mind like a splinter he couldn't ignore. On the 8th day, he told Elena, maybe he's trying to show us something. She didn't answer at first. She simply placed her trembling hand on Max's head, felt the tension beneath his fur, and whispered, "Show us what." The forest behind their home stretched wide and tangled, part of the old Bavarian landscape people respected more than they understood. There were hidden trails used by hunters, streams that cut through rocky beds, and burrows beneath roots older than any home nearby. If anyone knew its secrets, it was Max. So, the next morning when he tapped and whined, Marcus opened the back door and said softly, "Go on, boy." Max darted out instantly, as if waiting for that command all along, then turned back, urging them to follow. The forest looked different with each step they took, darker, heavier, almost watchful. Fallen leaves muffled their footsteps, and the smell of damp soil filled the air. Max moved with purpose, stopping occasionally to ensure they were behind him. He led them farther than the search teams had gone, deeper than the family had ever dared explore. Almost an hour in, Max stopped at a cluster of rocks and roots, lowered his head, and pawed gently at the same spot, over and over. Marcus crouched down, heart hammering. The soil seemed freshly disturbed. He brushed aside leaves and noticed a narrow gap between the rocks, small, but large enough for a child or an animal to slip through. His breath hitched. Had Lucas come here? Had he hidden, fallen, or, worse? Elena's knees buckled. She clutched Marcus's arm, her voice a mere breath. "Marcus, do you think?" But Max's behavior shifted again. He sniffed the gap, then suddenly backed away and ran deeper into the forest, barking once sharp, commanding like an order. Marcus felt pulled in two directions, fear of what they might discover, and desperate hope that refused to die. They followed Max again. The dog broke into a sprint. and by the time they caught up, they found themselves near an old wooden hunting cabin, half swallowed by moss and silence. The building leaned slightly, as though tired from years of disuse. Marcus had never seen it before. He didn't even know it existed. Max ran to the side of the cabin, stood on his hind legs, and reached up to scratch at the boarded-up window. And then, out of nowhere, a faint, almost impossible sound drifted out. A cry, a child's cry. Helena gasped so sharply it echoed. For a second, the world narrowed to that single sound. Marcus felt every hair on his body lift. They rushed to the front door and yanked it, but it was sealed with rusted chains. Max barked and clawed frenetically, desperate to reach whoever was inside. Marcus grabbed a fallen branch and swung it with all his strength at the weak hinge over and over until the wood splintered and the chains loosened just enough to force the door open. Inside the cabin, the light was dim and cold. Dust swirled in the air like tiny ghosts. The smell of mold and old wood mixed with something sharper: fear, desperation, perhaps even hope. In the corner, huddled beneath a torn blanket, was a small, trembling figure, Lucas. He was thinner, paler, dirt-stained, and shaking violently, but he was alive. Helena collapsed to her knees, sobbing so hard her body shook. Marcus fell beside her, pulling their son into their arms, touching his face, his hair, as if afraid he might vanish again if they let go. Max circled them, whining and licking Lucas's arms, his tail wagging for the first time in weeks. Later, when paramedics arrived and neighbors gathered in shock, bits of the story began to piece together. Lucas had wandered into the forest during the storm to look for Max, who had bolted after sensing something. But once inside the woods, the boy had slipped down a steep slope and injured his ankle. Lost, soaked, and terrified, he had crawled until he found the old cabin. He survived on rainwater dripping through the roof and a few food scraps left behind years ago. Weak, confused, and unable to shout loud enough to be heard, he waited, hoping Max would find him. When he whispered to his parents, his voice barely audible, Max came to the cabin a few times. I heard him. I tried calling. Marcus realized the truth. Max had known days earlier. He had been trying to get their attention all along. The tapping on the window wasn't random. It was a dog's desperate attempt to speak. The discovery left the community stunned. People who previously believed animals acted purely on instinct now questioned everything. How did Max know where Lucas was? How did he sense time was running out? How did he decide tapping on the window was the only way to communicate? But for the Webbers, the answer didn't matter. All they cared about was that their son was alive and that their loyal dog had refused to give up. As Lucas healed, Max never left his side. At night, he slept at the foot of the boy's bed, occasionally lifting his head to check that Lucas was breathing. During the day, he followed him from room to room, ears alert, if guarding him against even the possibility of being lost again. Lucas regained his strength slowly, each day adding a new step to his path back to normalcy. The cabin in the woods, once a symbol of fear and separation, was now a symbol of survival. Marcus would sometimes stand on the porch and stare into the trees, feeling humbled by how life had unfolded, how hope had been delivered not by humans, but by a loyal, grieving German shepherd who refused to surrender. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe so more people can experience stories that remind us of love, loyalty, and the miracles that happen every day. Before we close, we ask just one thing from you. Please comment below what would you have done if Max was your dog and refused to stop tapping on the window. And with that, the Weber story stands as a testament to devotion stronger than fear, hope stronger than loss, and the incredible bond between a boy and the dog who saved him not once, but every single day he refused to stop searching.